So I thought this would be an interesting thing to do here. This I bought a tractor. It's a around a 1980 Bolens G192, which is a 2-cylinder diesel, standard transmission, no hydrostatic anything, pretty simple tractor, built in Japan by ISEKI. Anyway, so I bought it for almost no money, and it had some issues with the 3-point hitch lift, and I had never taken one apart, and went on the internet and really couldn't find a whole lot of information. So I thought I'd go through how they work, at least this particular version, and a lot of them externally are similar, so I figured there might be a lot of similarities on the inside. So these are the arms on the back. So this is the rear of the tractor, so be towards the front, and then this housing actually sits on the transmission more or less like a hat, so this would be facing down when it's installed. So this is the rock shaft, the lift arms. There's a short arm in here going to this connecting rod that goes down to a piston, which is inside this. And this was the big deal for the repair. This had gotten pushed all the way out because the spring had broken, and the tractor thought it needed to go up all the time. So this had gotten rusty on the end and had shoved it all the way to the end and gotten jammed. So that was quite a project to get it unjammed, which I just did today. So, but I thought the interesting part, so here's the cylinder. This is, let me cut it down and zoom in a little bit. So this is the valve with the handle on the outside that you get to control how fast the implement drops. You can turn the knob and make it drop quicker or slower, or actually turn it all one way and it'll keep the implement lifted, so for like road travel. So this is a rod that goes in. There's a little O-ring here, and it's actually pushing. There's a threaded connection here, so it's pushing in on a valve. So if you're ever trying to get into one of these and you've got this part off, you've got to push in this valve, or else it's basically full of oil and it's not going anywhere. You're not going to be able to pull the piston out, or you're not going to be able to push it in. So here's the valve assembly, and this was the ultimate problem. This original spring had broken, and what happened was this valve was just flopped out in the open position. So it was basically telling it that it wanted to be pushing up all the time, and that basically pushed the piston beyond its limit. And then as you go further up, so there's a eccentric cam on the rock shaft, and that helps it to know where it is, because on this type of 3-point hitch you've got a position control. It's not just pulling the lever going up until you release it. You lift the arm up to the point, the level you want it, and the implement comes up and stops at that level. So there's some interesting linkage in here. So this rides against this eccentric. So as these are pretty much all the way up, so as the arms come down, this is going to stick out further, so it's going to push this lever down, and you can see the lever goes through another lever here, and then is pushing on the valve. So in this position, which is the the normal position with the spring, it's called open spool. So it's not putting any more fluid into the lift or out to any implements, to like a loader or anything. It's basically pumping the oil through the system and then just circulating it. So there's not a lot of pressure on the pump itself. So when you push the lever and it's calling for oil to go into the cylinder here, it's going to open the valve until such time as it gets up to the level that it needs to be, and then it's going to shut off the additional oil into it. So you can see if I move this, if I can, so this is actually controlling this black lever, which is hinged here with this, so it's a little bit of an offset. So it's preloading this to be open until it reaches the level it wants to be, and then it shuts off the fluid into the cylinder. This is the overpressure relief valve. So if you, like in the case with what happened to me, where this spring was broken and it was basically high pressure all the time, it was overcoming this valve and just flooding through the system. So it was circulating, but there was a lot of pressure against the pump, and within maybe 5 minutes of getting the tractor started, this case was hot. The oil line coming from the hydraulic pump on the engine was hot, so there was a lot of friction, a lot of pressure involved. So this is all should be working again. Took it apart. I had to force the piston back, hone out the cylinder. This was all rusty, and then use a porta power for the hydraulic and basically push the cylinder all the way out, honed the cylinder again, cleaned up the piston, and put it all back together. So this afternoon this will be going onto the tractor. So in terms of fluid flow, this is the suction screen. So there's a pipe connection here on the outside, which is the intake going up to the front of the tractor to the hydraulic pump. Then it comes back, and there's a plate over here on the side, a little further up, that's the high pressure inlet that goes through the case here and then into some not tubes, but passages in this casting, and then goes into the valve here, and then depending on the position it's going to push fluid into the cylinder and then or back out, and then when you're draining it, it's going to basically release it back through here. So if you've never seen one, I don't know how tractors vary, but I figured it might be interesting to see what's inside of one of these.